those who missed it, back in May of 2025, I made a video about the Pakistani animated feature The Glassworker, and vented about its lack of an American distributor despite being nearly a year old at that point. It was something I had been frustrated about for a while, what with G-Kids sitting on their lazy ass and all, so I thought I would talk about it and make more people aware, which would then hopefully result in someone actually picking the movie up someday. And that day was a mere 8 days later. On May 15th, 2025, The Glassworker was picked up for American distribution by Watermelon Pictures. Finally! It only took 11 fucking months! So let us pop the champagne and celebrate by watching me review a stupid kids movie. HitPig! Is a 2024 animated comedy film directed by Cinzia Angelini and David Feiss and distributed by Viva Kids! Woo! Let's fucking go! Anybody who knows me knows that if there's one thing I'm completely enamored by, it's Viva Kids. But for those who are new around here, I suppose I should introduce this prestigious company. Viva Kids is an American film distributor that specializes in smaller and international animated films. Oh, so they're like G-Kids. Well, no. By smaller and international animated films, I of course mean cheap kids movies. Who doesn't love those? Their entire brand is seemingly built around cheap children's entertainment that you'd find in the bargain bin at Walmart. From what I can gather, they've been in this business since the late 2000s, bringing us renowned classics such as Food Fight and Spy Cat, a movie that gives When Marnie Was There a run for its money. But they didn't start getting attention from people like me until these past few years, where they started giving movies semi-wide American releases because, hey, what could go wrong? This started with The Amazing Maurice back in 2023, and since then they've distributed movies such as Rally Road Racers, Inspector Sun, The Jungle Bunch 2, and of course, HitPig, a film that I promised I would review only if The Glassworker got picked up. I knew it was probably gonna happen someday, I just didn't think it would be a week later. So I guess I gotta make good on my promise and give the people what they want. I just had to put this on hold for the Wish video, the Vanguard ranking, and everything else I've made in the past year. Now, this is far from my first foray into the Viva Kids rabbit hole on this channel, but this one is gonna be very special. I mean, given what movie we're talking about, how could it not be? I've actually known about this film for a while, but didn't really think much of it until Viva got their hands on it. It's an adaptation of a children's book written by, Berkeley Breathed, and it was supposed to be done by DreamWorks back in the 2010s. But the project was abandoned in favor of The Boss Baby. Instead, this film was brought to us by Annie Venture, who previously did Paws of Fury, which I admittedly enjoyed. For the longest time, I figured this was one of those things that was stuck in production limbo and would never actually see the light of day, kinda like Paws of Fury was for a few years there. But thanks to our good friends at the illustrious Viva Kids, it was finally released on November 1st, 2024. Now, I've taken it upon myself to start an ironic hype campaign for every movie Viva distributes, but honestly, this one didn't actually look too bad from the trailer they released. Solid animation, a respectable cast, and an interesting enough premise of a pig bounty hunter. If you squint hard enough, it could maybe almost be mistaken for a real movie. So I was unironically kinda sorta excited for HitPig, and showed up on opening day in theaters to watch it. And I didn't even have to go to NYC for this, unlike some other movies from other distributors. And after experiencing it in theaters, I can say that it was the greatest cinematic experience of all time. Oh my god, talk about a life-changing film. It was magical, it was ethereal, it was transcendent. Violet Evergarden fucking wishes it could live up to the artistry, the potency, and the rich storytelling on display in HitPig. An unforgettable triumph in the realm of animation and cinema. 10 out of 10. Well, thanks for watching the review. See you next time. Yeah, I can't help it. HitPig just has this undeniable meme quality to it, from its mere existence to the premise to the tagline on the poster. The goat of finding lost animals is a pig. How long did it take you to come up with that one? But, little red flag going up, movies with these ironic meme qualities don't usually tend to be, you know, good. Is HitPig actually a bad film? Well, to be perfectly honest, no. HitPig is not that bad. Calling it amazing is definitely a stretch, but for what it is, it's a good-ish time. You're probably shocked considering this film was not reviewed favorably outside of its ironic fan base, but yeah, I don't think this is a bad movie at all. So let's take a closer look and see why that is. Usman Riaz, I did this for you. HitPig stars the titular bounty hunting swine who makes a living off of catching escaped animals and returning them to captivity. One day, an elephant named Pickles is stolen from the supreme god known as the Leaping Lord of the Leotard, who abuses her for his failed animal acts. So HitPig gets hired to return her for $1 million, but the two get into shenanigans along the way, and he ends up contemplating whether or not what he's doing is right. A pretty basic story on the outside, one that you can tell was adapted from a short-form children's book given how bare bones it seemingly is. But obviously, HitPig is not the kind of film you go in expecting a life-changing plot from, and to be fair, it does apply more intrigue than my plot synopsis would suggest. The idea of a bounty hunting pig is silly, but it honestly kind of works for what the movie is going for. Like, yeah, sure, I can buy into it. This obviously isn't a world where things are made to make sense. Although the movie does sit in this weird middle ground of having its own rules and then just doing whatever it wants. Like, why are animals like HitPig just walking around like humans and nobody's questioning it, yet other animals are treated like animals in testing labs and circus shows? And can these animals talk? HitPig can talk to humans and animals just fine, but there's a scene where the elephant has to communicate with a human using her trunk, so I guess she can't talk to humans. And then there are certain other animals like the crocodile or dogs who just don't speak English at all. It's weird, but whatever, who cares? I'm not here to question the logic of HitPig 2024. This film is definitely on the more bizarre side, and a lot of crazy shit happens in it, especially towards the end, which we'll get to. But I wouldn't say it's completely overbearing. There's still some sense of actual logic and stakes that weigh the story back down to earth. And the characters do at least provide something for the audience to latch onto. Honestly, my favorite aspect of the film is probably HitPig himself. He's just a fun protagonist, not to mention epic as shit. Jason Sudeikis' performance feels kinda phoned in, but I still think it suits the demeanor of this character well enough. They were originally gonna have Peter Dinklage in this role, who I love, don't get me wrong, but given his past voice roles, I'm not sure how well he would fit this character. But Sudeikis as a cool, lonesome pig bounty hunter? Yeah, sure, why not? And he's not just cool, they also tried to make him an actual layered character. Not like super layered, this isn't a Kyoto Animation movie, but like there was an attempt here. He loves cooking omelets on the side and grows to realize that's his true passion instead of capturing animals. And he has a mentor named Big Bertha who was eaten and killed by a crocodile at the beginning of the movie, making HitPig feel like he has no other option but to continue their bounty hunting line of work. Then later seeing that he was doing the job for the wrong reasons and it's not what Bertha would have wanted. These arcs aren't necessarily complex or super deep or anything, and they only get a few disconnected scenes each, but they still exist and they follow through with them, providing some substance for this character. On top of that, there's also the main arc of the film, the relationship between HitPig and Pickles, and HitPig contemplating on returning her to an abusive owner for money. Standard kids movie stuff, and you immediately get a sense of where it's gonna go just by watching the trailer. HitPig is gonna want to return Pickles unbeknownst to her, but then he grows a friendship with her during the journey and realizing that it may not be the right thing to do. Then the truth is revealed, and it's really sad, and yada yada yada, you get it. But honestly, as generic and overdone as this kind of plot is, it's executed fairly well here. Partially because HitPig is already a likable and semi-interesting character on his own, but also because each beat of the story is actually handled well compared to other generic kids movies. I like the friendship that Pickles and HitPig form, for the most part. It just feels very genuine, especially as the two start helping each other out. And the movie doesn't really feel like it's banking off the liar revealed angle that this type of plot usually goes for. HitPig only contemplates on the fact that he's lying in a few scenes, which may be a result of this movie's kinda poor pacing, but more on that in a bit. No, the focus is more so on the relationship between this pig and this elephant. That did not sound right. And since this relationship kinda worked for me, I don't mind that they're doing this whole lying plotline. Heck, once the truth is revealed, they don't even dwell on it for that long, and when we get to the climax, Pickles believes that HitPig genuinely wants to help her. Again, a result of the movie's fast pacing, but I think it's working in the movie's favor, as we don't have to spend too much time on these tropes that everyone dreads. So yeah, the story may be generic, but I think they make it work the best they can, helped by the creative flair that comes with the premise of a bounty hunting pig. But enough about Pig Hit himself. How are the other characters? Well, they're a bit of a mixed bag. A couple are surprisingly fun, while others did kinda get on my nerves. And unfortunately, one of the ones who falls into the latter category happens to be the second main character. This is Pickles. She's an elephant and she is annoying. I didn't think I was going to mind her based on the trailer or even her first couple scenes in the movie. But once she's freed and goes out into the world, I quickly grew tired of her. She's just so oblivious to everything, which is necessary since HitPig has to hide the lie from her, but it just gets annoying. And Lily Singh's performance is not helping matters. It gets draining to listen to after a bit. The best parts of the movie are definitely the first and the final acts. The first because the elephant isn't annoying yet, and we get to see HitPig go on some fun bounty hunting missions. Maybe a little too short and fast paced, I think think HitPig gets the call to retrieve Pickles like 15 minutes in. But still, good first impression, I was enjoying myself. Then Pickles leaves her plane ride after being rescued and screws around in this dance studio and causes trouble. Then they're on a plane again and Pickles needs to take a shit and she causes trouble. Then they build a car and Pickles pushes a bunch of buttons and causes trouble. Then they find a bunch of balloons and Pickles causes trouble. Do you see the problem here? It feels like they made Pickles stupid just so they can have some way to move this adventure along. Makes sense, I guess, but it just gets repetitive watching this stupid elephant ruin shit and throw the main characters off course again and again. This is when the movie felt the most like a generic kids movie, even without the whole lying plotline. It just feels like a bunch of shenanigans loosely tied together meant to fill out the runtime. The movie is only 73 minutes long, not counting credits, so it's evident they needed to fill this sucker out any way they could. But maybe I should just be grateful they didn't feel the need to make it 90 minutes. And to be fair, this middle chunk of the movie isn't all bad. Some of the disconnected shenanigans are kind of fun, like when they have a dance scene while building this car out of junk, or when they conveniently land on the set of HitPig's favorite cooking show and he gets to make an omelet with Pickles' help. These are almost entirely disconnected from the adventure, but they're fun little intervals that I think help grow the bond between the two main characters in a believable way. Even though I don't like Pickles, I think the two have decent camaraderie, and you can genuinely feel HitPig change from someone who wants money to someone who cares for Pickles and wants to help despite how much she can get on his nerves. Again, not a mind-blowing character arc or anything, but it's nice to watch unfold. If most of the second act was dedicated to these fun little vignettes instead of Pickles ruining shit, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more. But like I said, this movie is short. It's short and it's fast. The pacing during the beginning was already a bit too quick, but during the second act, the quick pace really becomes apparent with how these shenanigans just feel like they're quickly happening one after another. It can get a bit exhausting, especially with Pickles' stupidity, but I guess I'd still prefer this to the film being overly long and dragged out. And there aren't any additional subplots or arcs that the film needs to balance, so the pace of the main plot wasn't too much of an issue for me. What may be a bit more hit or miss is the humor. I will say, this film's writing is sharper than you may expect based on the poster, but like, not by much. There's quite a few funny lines in here thanks to their ridiculous scenarios, but unfortunately a lot of the humor also depends on you finding Pickles' stupidity funny, and I do not. There's also a lot of lame pop culture references that just feel forced. There's like 10 of them in the opening scene alone, and it sucks that's the first impression you're given because it doesn't entirely reflect the film's sense of humor. When it tries to build its own world and characters out of sheer wackiness, it can be amusing, even if those other characters are also pretty hit or miss. There's this chick who frees animals and is at odds with HitPig's bounty hunting business. I imagine if this movie was popular, there would be some very interesting fan art of her. But honestly, she's fairly forgettable and kinda only exists to drive the plot forward and give HitPig someone to work off of that isn't Pickles. I do welcome that change, but the movie should have given her more of a concrete purpose. Much like a lot of these extra animal side characters that are introduced at the beginning and then just sort of tag along for the third act for no reason. There's a koala who, according to the credits, is literally named Koala, and there's a weasel thing who farts plutonium and is fruity as fuck, which was clearly their intention given they got drag queen RuPaul to voice this thing. Hey, I mean, it's more bold queer representation than Disney has ever given us. There's also a lobster who doesn't really do anything, and there's also my favorite character, Super fucking Rooster. This epic as shit in-universe celebrity Rooster has no reason to be in this movie, but honestly I kinda love him for that. It drives home that this movie really does feel like one big cartoon with bounty hunting pigs and superhero roosters, which I can get behind. And of course we have the villain, the leaping lord of the leotard. He's a fat, rich lunatic who reminds me of a certain president, that president of course being Taylor Swift. I especially liked the 10-minute sex scene between him and HitPig. Honestly, he's pretty enjoyable. Villains who are just completely detached from reality are always fun for me. He's not deep or complex or anything, though this isn't the type of movie that really needs a villain like that. And his crazy plan adds a lot of fun to this movie's third act, but we'll get to that in a bit. In terms of production values, HitPig is perfectly fine. The animation is pretty standard, but it looks alright for what it is, and there's some creativity to admire with HitPig's catch fan and gadgets and whatnot. I like the designs of HitPig and Super Rooster as well, though the rest of the animals and humans look pretty generic, as do most of the backgrounds and locations. Apparently this movie is supposed to take place in a futuristic cyberpunk world, but it doesn't really show in the final movie. Outside of some creative gadgets like HitPig's gun, there's nothing really futuristic looking about most of the settings, which is a shame. I think giving these locations some extra flair multiplayer could have helped give this movie more of its own identity. Looking at some behind the scenes art, that seems like something they wanted to do before I imagine they were told to scale it back. In the final product, nothing really stands out visually, except for maybe the third act. Oh yeah, right before the climax, it's revealed that the Leaping Lord's plan was to do a show in space. But unfortunately, he wasn't smart enough to think of a way to get everyone back to Earth. Honestly, that's pretty funny, I kinda like that. This leads to an epic climax filled with tension and drama and action, and it's pretty fun, not gonna lie. Also, the score goes fucking insane here, and I have no idea why, but they were cooking. After returning to Earth, HitPig turns over a new leaf and stops hunting animals, instead making a living selling omelets. So, if he now believes in animal rights, where is he getting the eggs from? And look at that! All the pointless side characters have formed a little family, and they fly off into the sunset. Oh, and also the Leaping Lord dies. Okay, the end. So that was HitPig, and overall, it's unironically a kinda, sorta decent time. It has its shortcomings for sure, with some lame humor, a generic story, and the second act can be a bit of a chore to get through. But as a whole, I found myself kinda enjoying most of the film. It's decently written, the animation isn't bad, and it can get a few good laughs from time to time thanks to a mostly charming cast of characters. Much like Annie Venture's previous work, Paws of Fury, it falls into some generic kids movie traps, and as an overall package, it's not amazing, but I don't really think it's trying to be. It just wants to be a fun, silly time for kids, while still maintaining solid writing and production values. It reminds me a lot of a mid-tier DreamWorks movie that the legendary channel known as FX would air at 7 a.m. on Christmas Day, or a movie the B team at Sony Pictures Animation would make back in the early 2010s. And while that's not an amazing thing to be, I don't know, there's nothing wrong with trying to be that. If a young adult like me can get something out of this, then I'm sure kids will enjoy it, and maybe you will too. It's not a bad movie at all. And if I'm being perfectly honest, this isn't even an outlier for Viva Kids. Since 2023, most of the movies they've been putting out in theaters range from perfectly serviceable to genuinely pretty good. There's the occasional mediocre one or outright stinker, and none of the good ones are mind-blowing or anything, but honestly, they've put out some pretty decent children's movies. The Amazing Maurice was well made and fun, Inspector Sun was clever and funny, The Jungle Bunch 2 was actually somewhat enjoyable, Scary Girl was really good and had a super cool art style and a well-written story. Night of the Zoopocalypse wasn't amazing or anything, but it was still a fun kid-friendly spoof on classic zombie movies. And of course, HitPig, which was the widest release they've done. And I can see why, because like I said, it is quality enough to almost be mistaken for a movie from a major animation studio. It wouldn't be near the top of any of their filmographies, but it's not bottom of the barrel garbage either. None of the movies I just mentioned are. But unfortunately, a lot of the animation community doesn't seem to feel that way. Whenever I see these movies brought up, they're always dismissed as lowbrow trash that appeals to nobody. And I can understand why, given like, look at them. But I still think it's unfair given that, like I said, not all of them are that bad. I think there's a difference between actual horrendous filth that nobody should ever watch and decent enough kids movies that don't aim to be anything more. Like, are you seriously gonna tell me that HitPig, a movie that at the very least you can say has decent animation, belongs in the same tier as abominations such as Megamind vs. the Doom Syndicate or the Sandy Cheeks movie? I'm not saying you have to watch or like these movies, and I'm absolutely not saying that they belong in the same category or discussion as the art house and indie animated films I promote in an attempt to make the medium more respected. None of these movies are of the same ilk as movies like The Glassworker or Little Amelie or Sirocco or Look Back or Memoir of a Snail or Flo or Chicken for Linda but I don't think they belong in the garbage pile of slop either. I feel like certain parts of the animation community scoff at and shove aside any animated film not from these major American studios. And while that's much more outrageous for the actual masterpieces akin to the films I just mentioned, I still think it's wrong to shove aside these smaller CGI kids movies just because they're smaller CGI kids movies. It feels like people put them on a lower tier without judging them fairly. Well, it's not a major studio, so that means it's not as good. And that's just not true. Sure, there's a lot, and I mean a lot of garbage not from major studios, but there are genuinely some decent ones that have worth. Not that much worth, but still some. Plus, these same people will watch bad movies from major studios and give them passes without issue. Like, I'm sorry, but if you give Wish a 7 out of 10, I'm not taking you seriously when you give HitPig a 2. Put that on my tombstone. While these movies aren't amazing, and you won't be finding the next Silent Voice in here anytime soon, I think they at least deserve a fair shakedown. And if they're just okay, then that's okay. You might recall in my Glassworker video, I said this: not every non-mainstream animated movie is gonna be a Silent Voice or Belle for me, and that's okay. As long as there's a sense of passion and heart and artistry, your movie has my respect. And that sentiment very much applies here as well. Not every movie needs to be a life-changing masterpiece, and that's fine. I don't inherently mind movies that are just fun, silly times for kids. Some people seem to think that I I do because I'm mean to illumination in modern Disney movies, and yeah, I still stand by those being bad. Just because your movie doesn't need to be perfect does not mean I'm going to excuse low-quality, passionless work for children that was farted out for a quick buck. You still need to have adequate writing and at least a shred of artistry and uniqueness, which most of these Viva movies do. I can commend them for trying new things, experimenting with certain genres, and not just milking the same franchises into oblivion. For as flawed and not great as it is, HitPig still has 10 times more merit than the likes of Moana 2 and Despicable Me 4, and a million times more merit than any of this live-action Disney schlock. So I guess the moral of this story that really didn't need a moral is, don't judge a book by its cover. Don't automatically dismiss an animated film that isn't from a major studio or an artistic foreign masterpiece. There's a place for these types of movies, and not all of them are bad. Only most of them are bad. If Viva Kids merely wants to provide a home for these types of movies and put more decent-ish quality kids movies on the US release schedule, then I honestly don't have a problem with them sticking around. They've committed horrific atrocities in the past, but I don't think these new movies are really hurting anyone. So if you want to give some of these a shot, then go right ahead. There's at least a little value in these movies, and I think they deserve a chance. So yeah, 6 out of 10. There you go, I finally reviewed HitPig. It only took a year. Go check out this glorious cinematic masterpiece, and more importantly, check out The Glassworker. It's way better, but you already knew that. I'm overjoyed it's readily available in the US now, but I will not be entirely satisfied until it has more letterbox views than Megamind vs. the Doom Syndicate. Don't you dare let me down this time. Once that happens, I will return the favor and review,